Not as humid, a much fresher feel, but we could still get to 25 across the southeast. Staying fine here on Thursday evening, a few more showers keeping going across western Scotland, some coming into Northern Ireland. We may see some feeding in through the Irish Sea into parts of northwest England into Friday morning. So yes, a few showers again across the northwest on Friday, but much of the east and certainly across the south. Not much in the way of rainfall. It's a dry, fine day on Friday with lengthy spells of sunshine, that fresher feel, that less humid feel, with temperatures close to average high teens or low 20s. But again, feeling pretty fresh across northern Scotland with temperatures here in the mid-teens. Into the weekend, again, if you have to rain, it's not good news. Most places dry with sunny spells, starting off quite fresh, but signs of things warming up through the weekend into next week.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, Matt. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
No spin, no bias, no censorship. I'm Dan Wootton. Tonight, Liz Truss has received her biggest boost yet after winning the endorsement of the country's highest-selling newspaper, the Daily Mail, and the former Health Secretary, Sajid Javid, all while blazing ahead of Rishi Sunak in a YouGov poll of Tory party members. So, could she now follow in the footsteps of Boris Johnson and beat the odds to deliver another stonking Tory majority? At 10 p.m, I'll get the verdict of my superstar panel. Top columnist at the aforementioned Daily Mail, Amanda Platel, entrepreneur and activist Adam Brooks, and broadcaster Ashley James. After expressing concern at the disproportionate number of women convicted for defying the BBC's poll tax, could Truss be the Prime Minister to finally axe the licence fee? I'll analyse why she must do that and see the end of us having to pay for the British bashing corporation. That's in my digest next. Should Boris return to the ballot amid fears cyber hacking could damage the integrity of the leadership vote as proposed by Lord Cruddas? The outgoing PM's loyal ally Michael Fabricant joins me live on that at 10:20. After small boat arrivals hit record levels this week, is the UK just too welcoming of illegal migrants? I've got a doozy of a clash on this topic at 9:25 as political firebrand and former Brexit Party MEP Anne Widdecombe goes head-to-head with the broadcaster Nina Mishkov. Oh, I can't wait. I'll reveal your verdict too. As Nancy Pelosi leaves Taiwan to the sound of Chinese fury, has her controversial trip jeopardised peace in the region? US superstar journalist Megyn Kelly beams in from across the Atlantic to give her unfiltered take at 9:40. She will only receive 3 doses of the COVID-19 jab, but amid growing concerns about the scale of vaccine damage and what she describes as a sense of being blackmailed by Big Pharma, best-selling author and Spectator columnist Lionel Shriver has said hell no to another booster. She's going to explain her dramatic about-turn in tonight's Outsider. After the closure of the Tavistock Gender Identity Clinic, dubbed not safe by the NHS, will right-thinking people finally rebel against the force-feeding of liberal falsehoods? Columnist extraordinaire Rod Little uncancelled on that at 10:40. And as pop star Demi Lovato reveals she's once again going by she, her less than 15 months after demanding to be known as they, them.
So for me, recently I've been feeling more feminine, and so...
Isn't it time just to ignore all this virtue signalling, pronoun madness once and for all? Plus, is it possible to stop a nuclear war using only the power of the mind? Well, this man certainly thinks so.
And I have a warning for you, Putin. I urge you all to read my warning, all of you. And I'm serious about it, very.
I'll bring you more of spoonbender Yuri Gala's stark warning to Putin and the media buzz at 10:30. Tomorrow's newspaper front pages will be on the way throughout the show too, and it's a superstar panel loving. For tonight's Greatest Britain and Union Jackass nominations, I'll crown my winners at 10:50. This is Dan Wootton Tonight. Let's go. Just one thing first, though, as I predicted last night, Premier League captains have finally seen sense and decided not to take the knee before every game this season, although they say they'll keep the divisive BLM political gesture in reserve for special matches. Now, the decision, in my opinion, now heaps the pressure on Gareth Southgate and the England World Cup team, who seem determined to continue kneeling in Qatar later this year. As I've written in a new column for the Mail Online tonight, Premier League captains are right to stop taking the knee, a BLM gesture that only increases division. But the irony of a bunch of privileged millionaire footballers performing an anti-discrimination gesture in a totalitarian country where gay folk and female rape victims can be thrown into jail is off the scale. If they're stupid enough to kneel in Qatar, they actually deserve to be laughed off the pitch. The latest on the battle to be PM with my superstar panel next. Let's take a first look at them. The Daily Mail columnist Amanda Platala's here. So too the businessman and activist Adam Brooks and the broadcaster Ashley James. But before all of that, the news headlines at 9 with Tamsin Roberts.
Dan, thank you. Good evening from the GB newsroom. A final attempt by the parents of Archie Battersby to postpone the withdrawal of his life support has been refused by the European Court of Human Rights. The 12-year-old has been in a coma since April and doctors have declared him brainstem dead. His parents appealed to the European Court just hours before Bart's Health NHS Trust had been expected to end his treatment. Archie's mother, Holly Dance, has said the rejection is another heartbreaking development and that they will now fight to get Archie moved to a hospice. The two Conservative leadership candidates have set out their plan for the UK at tonight's hustings event in Cardiff. Rishi Sunak pledged to give everything, his heart and soul, into making a Conservative Party that members would be proud of. The former Chancellor set out a number of key policies, including what he described as bold and radical reforms to make the NHS more cost-effective. He promised to cut income tax once inflation is under control, and he laid out a plan to directly cooperate with countries in removing failed asylum seekers from the UK.
Because at the moment, we have this slightly absurd situation that we'll go and talk to a country about signing a trade deal with them and giving them access to our market. We'll even go further and say, actually, here's some aid from our aid budget to help you. And whilst we're doing all of that, we slightly neglect to say, oh, hang on, can you take back your failed asylum seekers?
Meanwhile, Sajid Javid has become the latest heavyweight to throw his support behind Liz Truss to be the next Conservative Party leader. Writing in The Times, he criticised her rival, Rishi Sunak, and his policies, insisting tax cuts are now essential. Well, Liz Truss has been answering questions from audience members also at the hustings event, and we'll bring you more on this story throughout the evening. The Bank of England is expected to announce another interest rate hike tomorrow. The central bank's under pressure to control spiralling inflation, with a think tank warning it could hit 15% next year. The Resolution Foundation says oil prices have fallen substantially, But gas price increases are wiping out any good news. If the bank raises the base rate by 0.5 percentage point, it'll be the biggest increase since 1995. G7 foreign ministers are calling on China to de-escalate its aggressive military activity around the Taiwan Strait, following the highest-level US visit to the island in 25 years. In a 24-hour trip, US House Speaker Nancy Pelosi met with Taiwan's president, signalling Washington's support to the nation. In response, the Chinese Air Force sent around 30 jets across the median line bordering the two countries. Beijing says it plans further military exercises around the island's sea and air borders. TV, online and DAB+ radio, this is GB News. Now it's back to Dan Wootton tonight.
It remains one of the biggest stains on this country that you are forced to pay an annual £159 poll tax to the biased BBC. That's even if you never watch and never listen to even one piece of content from the British bashing corporation, but choose to have a television set to, tune into, for example, GB News. But what remains an even bigger disgrace is that hard-working folk, including the elderly, have been sent to jail for non-payment of what the Bee prefers us to refer to as the licence fee. It's infuriating that in a free society we are not free to boycott the BBC unless we give up the right to consume any form of TV. This week, even French President Macron agreed to cut his country's broadcasting tax. It's unbelievable that a Conservative government has allowed this anti-democratic madness to continue in this country for so long, especially in a rapidly changing media environment moving towards streaming and subscription. And especially when the BBC's output has become everything that so many of us fight against: divisive, woke madness. Like the way they tried to shame the Lionesses because they happen to be white.
It was an historic 8-goal victory for England last night as the Lionesses secured their place in the quarter-finals. But all starting 11 players and the 5 substitutes that came onto the pitch were all white. And that does point towards a lack of diversity in the women's game in England. And it's something that...
So that was last month. But I mean, let's be honest, the BBC's shameful agenda has been clear for years.
I suppose, looking at the crowd, it is a very white crowd, mostly.
When we say we want to kill Whitey, we don't really mean we want to kill Whitey, we do.
Why bother with a milkshake when you could get some battery acid?
Well, Jenner, thank you. I think your flag is not up to standard size government interview measurements. I think it's just a little bit small, but that's your department, really.
You're going to the developing world saying phase out coal at the same time as not ruling out a new coal mine in Britain. A new coal mine in Britain. We started the Industrial Revolution. We should have closed the mine. I've just given you the statistics before
Boris Johnson faces calls to bring in tighter COVID restrictions in England over Christmas.
For days, there's been a growing sense around here that more restrictions for England are inevitable.
Good evening. Dominic Cummings broke the rules. The country can see that, and it's shocked the government cannot.
He will now be, I think, the first Prime Minister to be investigated for potentially misleading the Houses of Parliament. Very serious, and that could, you would agree, lead to your resignation.
I'm going to do something now that the British government doesn't always do, and welcome some foreigners.
He's a man who's lied to the Queen, lied to the House of Commons, lied to the public, and they don't trust him anymore.
What people see, Geeta, is a witch hunt led by the BBC.
This programme that I'm on now was showing pictures of him looking like Hannibal Lecter at the beginning.
Oh, come on.
Okay, I can show you right here. Look at that. You've got razor blades. I mean, does that guy look like somebody who's been given a birthday cake, or someone who's just been locked up for something at the Old Bailey? I mean, this thing has been blown totally out of proportion.
All right. That's what we are being forced to pay for. I'm hopeful today of change finally coming after the Tory leadership favourite said she will order a review into whether failing to pay for the BBC should still be a criminal offence. So Liz Truss revealed she is concerned that 74% of the 114,000 people convicted for non-payment in 2019 were women. In an exclusive interview with the Mail Plus, she said, "What I'm very concerned about on the TV licence fee is how many women have ended up in prison for non-payment, a disproportionate number. I want to look at how we can make sure that we reform the TV licence fee so we don't end up with those punitive results. I'll look at all the options. I do want to reform the way it works." As Culture Secretary, Truss supporter Nadine Dorries has been determined to axe the licence fee altogether, something she says the other Tory leadership contender Rishi Sunak, quote, blocked for many months. A plan for a post-licence fee BBC from 2027, when it's legally allowed to happen, must be part of the next Prime Minister's plan. But decriminalisation of the licence fee, that needs to happen immediately. In Britain in 2022, we must be free to watch commercial television while refusing to pay for the destructive and unpatriotic BBC as a democratic right. But to respond, now my superstar panel. Daily Mail columnist Amanda Patel, the businessman and activist Adam Brooks, and the broadcaster Ashley James. Amanda Patel, I think it is an absolute outrage that we still in this country, to even watch television, to even turn on a television set, we have to pay the £159, whether we want to consume BBC content or not. Liz Truss made some positive noises, but do you think she needs to go further?
Well, first of all, Dan, hurrah to all those women who are prepared to go to prison. That's feminism at its best. Forget the lionesses. These are lionesses in their own homes saying, I will not pay this fee. And if they want to find me, they can find me. If they want to send me to prison, they can send me to prison. So well done, all those women. But the BBC faces an existential crisis. You know, we look at our own viewing habits and, you know, if you can get Netflix for 10 quid a month when you share it with your family, it's like £1 a month. I hardly ever watch the BBC now. I'm sick to death of turning on a weather report or watching the end of something and seeing the weather report and they're saying, it's all global warming. And it's saying, it's really hot in this part of the... It's all global warming. And you just think they're just lecturing us and they've introduced a kind of political narrative into what should be completely straight news. But, of course, Rishi did say that he would ban, this was his today, he said, or yesterday, that he would ban the TV licence. I mean, who would trust that backstabbing snake? Although, actually, I can't say that ever again. I've been told I can't say that.
Why?
Because snakes don't have arms, so they can't stab. Think about it.
Good point.
That's true, isn't it?
Very good point.
I want to correct myself on GB News.
Very deep.
He's a snake.
Yeah, I don't trust that.
The backstabber's better.
I don't trust it all, given what Nadine
What would you call him?
said.
What would you call him?
I think a snake is very appropriate. A poisonous little snake.
Let's go. We need a new nickname for Rishi.
We do.
Adam, the licence fee. Do we need stronger positions here from Liz Truss? Because she sort of said the right thing. She said what we wanted to hear, but I want a commitment. I want a hard and fast commitment on this.
Let's have it right. It's disproportionate. People going to jail for not paying a TV, you know.
Or getting a £1,000 fine.
Yeah, it's disproportionate. And at the end of the day, we don't even prosecute shoplifters that take under a certain amount. It's wrong. And, you know, especially I've got my views on the BBC. There's some great content.
Like what?
Well, there's some great content, but,
like,
you know...
Give me an example. The Apprentice. I do like The Apprentice.
Right, but there's also a lot of programmes that push agendas.
No.
There's a lot of woke nonsense on there, whether it be presenters or the content, you know. And
well, look at what they did with the Lionesses.
Yeah, and look, I can't even bear to watch people like Gary Lineker, and the thought that, you know, they're getting millions of pounds from the people. It's a wind-up, you know. And I think they need to take a good hard look at themselves. And Liz is right here. She needs to be strong.
Ashley James, why should we have to keep paying for the BBC?
Look, I don't fully disagree with a lot of your points. I think it is really important to point out
That's
that
progress.
nobody...
We're getting somewhere.
Yeah, nobody is in prison for not paying the fee. And also, to counter your argument, I actually don't think it's girl power that it is disproportionately affecting women. I actually think it's that 90% of single households are female households, and it's actually that they cannot afford to pay the fee. And I think it is absolutely outrageous, especially in a cost of living crisis, when more and more people are struggling to pay bills, that people who cannot afford to pay the licence fee are being forced to pay the licence fee. We also have a justice system that is completely backlogged, so actual criminals, burglars, whatever they might be, aren't being seen in court. So yes, to an extent, I do agree that this needs to be reviewed. I think it's really important also to point out that the licence fee can't be scrapped until 2027. These people might not even be in power then, so I think...
Yeah, but they could decriminalise the payment.
Yeah, and I would agree with that.
They could decriminalise non-payment of the licence fee. She could do that.
I personally don't mind. I don't really watch the BBC a lot, but I like, you know, my family loves Strictly Come Dancing, and I do think one thing that they did was really good. During lockdown, when the schools were closed, they really quickly put together a really good educational programme so that children got education.
Fair credit to that, yeah.
And I think that is something that's important. I grew up loving BBC Radio 1. You know, there's so many radio stations, and
which would be
like in
snapped
France,
up by
France has obviously scrapped the
companies.
licence fee, but on the left and the right, there is now concern about what's going to happen in a couple of years. But I'm not opposed to scrapping the licence fee. I agree that it doesn't seem fair that people who are unable to afford, like, basic costs have to pay for something, especially if they don't watch it. But I'd worry about the complete privatisation of the service.
I
want it to fund it altogether.
I would so love it.
I also
would
think
love
it's worth pointing
them
out
to operate in a fair marketplace like the rest of the news organisations.
Like we have to. And then we'll see if
or
people
maybe
want to
we
pay
could have an option where you don't pay the licence fee, but you have to watch ads. I would go for that.
I would be happy with that. Well, that would be the ultimate.
Dan, there's going to be millions in the next 12 months that can't afford the licence fee. So they've got to decriminalise it because
it will just naturally happen.
There's going to be millions that can't pay it. So what are they going to do? Put all them in jail?
But the good news, the only upside of that is that if they're all in prison, they can watch TV for free.
Yeah, and get fed for nothing.
Sky.
Yeah, and not
we don't
pay
like
energy
Sky.
bills.
But Adam, I think what is interesting to me about this, though, is that there are a lot of people who can afford to pay for the BBC. But quite rightly, this is an ideological thing because the BBC no longer represents us in a way that it once did. And you were a big Brexiteer, of course, and I think it really was the BBC's disgraceful coverage of the referendum that started all of this.
It seems to be. The BBC seems to be against everything that I'm for. So, yeah, I get that. I do get that. And I just don't want to be lectured, whether it be a programme or by a presenter.
Well, as Amanda says, even in the weather now. You can't just get a weather forecast. You've got to have a burning red-hot map and be told there's all to climate change.
I was just going to say, I do think it's interesting, though, and by the way, like I said, I don't really watch the BBC, and I haven't for ages, so I can't really comment on what side they are on.
But you saw all of those.
Yeah, I did see that one side of the clip, but I think it's interesting that the left find the BBC very right and the right find the BBC very left, and maybe that is because we are kind of in this divisive nation at the moment, which I don't want either, but then they're obviously relatively in the middle because they're upsetting both sides.
Can I just add one little thing here? This is how biased the BBC is. I'm not going to name the shows or anything like that. I was a regular presenter on a BBC show, a new edit. What?
I'm just going to Google.
A new editor. I was a regular guest on the show. A new editor came in who was so... I mean, he made Corbyn look like he was right-wing. And I never... As soon as he got in there, I never appeared again because he said, I can't stand the sight of anyone from the Daily Mail on my show.
And Peter Hitchens has said a very similar thing.
And I'm sorry, but that is absolutely true.
Yeah, I think it's a completely disgrace and the BBC deserves to be defunded. But what I want is a stronger commitment here from Liz Truss. So if you're at the hustings, by the way, ask her, because that's where we got that commitment on the lockdown. I think it's really important because the journalists are not going to ask the good questions in this campaign. You've got to ask them. So if you go to one of the hustings, let's get a commitment from Liz Truss on axing the licence fee. I think it's really important. Ashley James, Adam Brooks, Amanda Patel, my superstar panel, they're here all night. But coming up, with China threatening World War III over her controversial trip to Taiwan, has Nancy Pelosi jeopardised peace in the region and possibly beyond? US superstar journalist Megyn Kelly weighs in on that soon. But up next, after small boat arrivals hit record levels this week, is the UK too welcoming of illegal migrants? Former Tory minister and Brexit Party MEP Anne Widdecombe goes head-to-head with the broadcaster Nina Mishkov straight after the break. But of course, your verdict most important to me. Email me, dan@gbnews.uk. Tweet me using the handle @gbnews. Our poll running there too. The results in just a few minutes.
Good evening. Alex Deakin here with your latest weather update. Good news if you're not a fan of the humidity. It is turning fresher for all of us tonight and tomorrow. Remaining dry, though, across the south. Not much rain where we really need it. There will be showers further north from low pressure. There is this weather front drifting south. That is introducing the cooler and fresher air, but it's not introducing much rain. And the warmth and humidity still there at the moment across East Anglia and the southeast, but it will turn cooler as the night goes on. But as I said, not much in the way of rainfall, just the odd shower here and there. Much more in the way of rainfall further north, some pretty heavy rain this evening for Northern Ireland, and we'll see some heavy bursts of rain across eastern Scotland as well. Comfortable night here and elsewhere. It is turning cooler, but even by dawn, only temperatures dropping to 15 or 16 across East Anglia and the southeast. But it will feel fresher here tomorrow. Generally dry and sunny across the Midlands, South Wales and southern England. Further north there'll be sunny spells, but there will be showers as well, particularly early on over northwest England and throughout the day across northern Scotland. Temperatures here struggling in the mid-teens, but elsewhere close to average, high teens, low 20s, so not as humid, a much fresher feel, but we could still get to 25 across the southeast. Staying fine here on Thursday evening, a few more showers keeping going across western Scotland, some coming into Northern Ireland. We may see some feeding in through the Irish Sea into parts of northwest England into Friday morning. So yes, a few showers again across the northwest on Friday, but much of the east and certainly across the south. Not much in the way of rainfall. It's a dry, fine day on Friday with lengthy spells of sunshine, that fresher feel, that less humid feel, with temperatures close to average, high teens or low 20s. But again, feeling pretty fresh across northern Scotland with temperatures here in the mid-teens. Into the weekend, again, if you have to rain, it's not good news. Most places dry with sunny spells, starting off quite fresh, but signs of things warming up through the weekend into next week.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV. On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you. We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, Matt. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
US media superstar Megyn Kelly and best-selling author Lionel Shriver both coming up this hour. But first, it's time for The Clash. The number of migrant crossings to the UK reached a record high on Monday, with a total of 696 making the journey across the Channel. The number of crossings this year has now surpassed 17,000 people, a stark increase from the 9,500 that occurred at the same time last year. And these staggering figures follows reports that the Home Secretary, Priti Patel, is close to agreeing a return to the borders deal with France. That move comes despite previous deals with the French border force failing to make any kind of serious impact in preventing crossings. There also remains uncertainty, of course, over the government's Rwanda plan, which has been mired in legal disputes after left-wing activists predictably took umbrage to the deal. And naturally, the Liberal elites don't seem to care about the migrant crisis spiralling out of control, but we certainly do here at GB News. So tonight I'm asking you this. After small boat arrivals hit record levels this week, is the UK too welcoming of illegal migrants? Let me know your thoughts by emailing dan@gbnews.uk. Tweet me at GBNews. While you're there, go and vote in our poll. Of course, those results coming up shortly, but to help you make up your mind, I'm joined by the former Conservative Minister and Brexit Party MEP, Anne Widdecombe, and the writer and broadcaster, Nina Mishkov. So, Anne Widdecombe, are we just being far too welcoming to illegal migrants?
Well, it isn't a question of whether we're welcoming or not. Our problem is that we're just not taking any realistic action to deter them from coming in the numbers that they're coming in. The idea of saying that we're going to cooperate with France. We have been cooperating with France for years. They haven't been cooperating with us. We paid them huge sums of money. They haven't delivered. No salvation at all is in cooperating with France. Now, what I think we've got to do is two things. One, I think we've got to get the Rwanda plan reactivated by coming out of the ECHR, but you can't do that by Tuesday afternoon. The second thing is I think that we need to implement the policy that I advocated 20 years ago, which is that you automatically detain in secure accommodation all new asylum seekers, so we know where they are while we consider their cases individually, and then because we know where they are, we can return those that do not qualify for asylum. But at the moment, we don't do that. We have a flourishing underground economy in this country. We have no national identity cards. One of the big attractions of Britain is that it's one of the easiest places in which to disappear. They're in a safe country. They're in France, which is a signatory to every convention that we have signed up to. They're a country under the rule of law. They're in a democratic country. That is where they should be applying for asylum.
Nina Mishkov, we're just too welcoming, aren't we?
No, we're not. I mean, we signed up to the Geneva Convention on Refugees in 1951, and we have not, as far as I know, abdicated from that. And we were talking about illegal migrants. We don't know they're illegal until they've been processed. And more than 50% of the migrants that land on our shores turn out to be not illegal. I'd like to take up Anne's first point, which is Rwanda. Rwanda is just a pie-in-the-sky scheme that is absolutely not going to work. For a start, I doubt very much if there's ever going to be any flights this year because of the legal considerations. No, we're not even talking about humanity or whether this is right or wrong. But just very recently, Rwanda came out and said, well, they've only got room for 200 at the moment. Well, 200 doesn't do it. And we've paid them 120 million. This is just rearranging the deck chairs. The trouble is we have Priti Patel, who's been absolutely disastrous. We have a Foreign Office which is not fit for purpose. What we need is a system where, set up in France, which the French have offered to us and which we turned down a couple of years ago, was to set up a system where people can apply in France and be processed there and disposed of before they come over here. When people come here, they need to be processed quickly. Why does it take years? They're incarcerated and they're not allowed to work. We have a...
Yes, and you come in.
Thank you. If they're in France, then they should be applying initially to France. That is what they should be doing.
Anne, they are allowed under the Geneva Convention to go...
Nina, just let Anne answer, Nina, and then I'll come back to you.
I'm sorry, Nina, but this is a two-way discussion, not a one-way one. If they're in France, they should be applying to France. Secondly, it's all very well offering facilities in France itself. But if they don't qualify, do you really think they're just going to go away? They will come here anyway on the boats because we are an attractive place to be because you can disappear so easily. They're economic migrants, an awful lot of them. Some are genuine refugees. And I mean, the one thing that I do have in common with Nina is that if they are genuine refugees, they should be given a proper welcome. we could establish that much more quickly if we knew exactly where they were and had them in one place. And that is what I have advocated for years.
Because, Nina, the reality is, as Anne says, the vast majority are economic migrants.
No,
look at their age.
That's not true.
Look
That's
at where
not
they're coming
true.
from. It is true,
It's not,
Nina.
not the majority. The majority are not illegal.
Where's your evidence for that?
I mean, the facts are there that they are not illegal, and the problem is they need to be processed properly. You know, we have got 1.2 million jobs going begging. You know, if we could process these people, you know, fruits rotting in the fields, vegetables are rotting. You know, if these are people that can be processed quickly, and if they're legal, put to work, get them paying taxes, get them part of the system. You know, countries were established, cities were established on migrants. It's, you know, we need.
But then that makes us an even more attractive destination for the people smugglers. I mean, Nina, you're not talking about the fact that this illegal migrant trade, which you seem to want to encourage, is all about empowering people smuggling gangs.
I'm not trying to encourage it. I'm saying they should be processed quickly. The problem is we're not processing them quickly enough. If we process them, if we had a decent system, where you know, and the other problem is, since we left the European Union, the Dublin Agreement does not come into play. Now, under those terms, when we were in Europe, the Dublin Agreement meant that we could send back illegal migrants to the country in Europe where they first landed, or another European country. Now, we are not able to do that, as we're no longer in Europe. So that should have been, you know, that...
Well, we are in Europe. We are in Europe.
Yes, but we are not...
We are in Europe. We are not in the European Union. That's a very good thing. Anne Widdecombe, you come in.
Actually sent back under the Dublin Convention, because we had, and I well know this myself, we had the devil's own job. To get the Dublin Convention to work and for countries to accept them back. So the idea that because we've left, we've suddenly given up a major facility. It was a facility that never worked, Nina. Now, you give me the statistics, since you're so fond of statistics. How many people did we send back under the Dublin Convention?
I have no idea, but the facility is there, and if we can make it work, it was there, but we no longer have that facility. But the problem is you have to treat this efficiently, professionally, and also with humanity. And I think the trouble is we have got a government that is, well, it's a caretaker government. It's not taking care of anybody at the moment. So they know the weather is good. They know we don't have a government that's in place. I mean, a year ago, you know, we had the whole Afghanistan thing. We had Dominic Raab on a beach not doing his job, and his civil servant, his top civil servant, who should have been carrying the can and doing the job and facilitating all of that, also refused to come back from holiday. So they know that at this time of year, there's nobody minding the gate. So you can see it, apart from the good weather. That's why they come. We don't have a government that's functioning. And God help us when Liz Truss gets in, because she'll get in. I mean, I cannot imagine how she's going to deal with this. There's absolutely no way. She reminds me of one of those shop floor dummies in a defunct 50s department store in the window, left in the window, and you look at it and you think, my God, I can see why they went broke.
Well, I think that's very unkind, very unkind.
I'm sorry, it just struck
and very
me,
demeaning of a woman who has been an accomplished cabinet minister for the past 10 years and who did an incredible job as the international trade secretary of this country. And Anne Widdecombe, do you want to respond?
You can't tell the difference.
Nina, just let Anne Widdecombe respond.
Not the Baltic. You know where the Baltic and the Black Sea is, and she doesn't.
Nina, just let Anne come in.
Just be fair and make it a two-way conversation. First of all, Nina and I are actually at one over Afghanistan. It was handled hugely badly, and not just at the time with people on beaches, but for years beforehand. We knew exactly who the Afghan interpreters were. They were identifiable by their commanding officers, and we did dash all about it. And I have been yelling that from the rooftops and in my Express column for a very, very long time. But on the general issue of migrants coming here, the facts are we are too attractive because of the system. We don't practice routine detention. We don't have, as I say, national identity cards or any means of tracing people who just don't go where they're supposed to go. And there is a way through this which would actually combine what Nina wants, which is fast processing, which I'm in agreement with, and what I want, which is to know where they are, And that is, as I say, if you detained routinely every new asylum seeker, you can't do it with those that are already here, every new asylum seeker, if you detained them routinely, you'd know where they are. And if you say no, then you can send them back. But if you're going to say yes, you can do it that much more quickly because you've got them on the spot. You don't have to rely on the post and finding out where they are. You can pursue their nationality and all the rest of it, because half of them lie about that. You can do all of that. And I'm afraid, Nina, I think you're just, you're humane, and that's great, but I think you're also rather starry-eyed.
I'm not at all starry-eyed. I'm very pragmatic and practical. And it is not practical nor humane to detain every single person that comes onto our shores. It is absolutely not right. No other country in the world does
All right.
that.
Well, look, spirited debate. I enjoyed it very much. Thank you so much to the former Tory minister, Anne Widdecombe, and the broadcaster and writer, Nina Mishkov. But who do you agree with? After small boat arrivals hit record levels this week, is the UK too welcoming of illegal migrants? From Jack on Twitter, it's high time that we send people back to France, a perfectly safe country, instead of allowing a huge number to come here whilst making us pay for it. From Trev, I don't think we are welcoming. We are just incapable of securing our borders. It's a travesty. Successive governments started by Labour chose not to bother policing our borders over 20 years ago, and now they've forgotten how to do it. And from Richard via the email, regardless of any opinions on illegal migration, one thing is for sure, it cannot continue as it is. So someone is going to have to come up with a solution. And in terms of the results, 93% of you agree that the UK is too welcoming of illegal migrants. Just 7% of you say we're not. Coming up, she's had 3 shots of the COVID-19 jab, but like Al is best-selling author and Spectator columnist Lionel Shriver going to have another booster. She explains her dramatic about turn in The Outsider at 9:50. But next, as Nancy Pelosi leaves Taiwan to the sound of Chinese fury, has her controversial trip threatened peace in the region and put the West in peril? US superstar journalist Megyn Kelly live on that from the US straight after the break.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you. We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, Matt. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
A key voice of support for the campaign to get Boris on the leadership ballot, Michael Fabricant, coming up. First, it's time for Megyn Kelly, star US journalist, host of the brilliant Megyn Kelly Show podcast. And US Speaker Nancy Pelosi has left Taiwan after a controversial trip that sparked Chinese fury. The leading Democrat is the most senior US politician to visit in 25 years after she boldly ignored Beijing's warning not to travel to the island it claims as Chinese territory. In retaliation, China's military is holding 6 days of live fire drills that will surround the island, but Pelosi refused to be cowed by the threats, vowing, "Make no mistake, America remains unwavering in our commitment to the people of Taiwan now and for decades to come." Now, our Foreign Secretary and, of course, the probable next Prime Minister, Liz Truss, also defended the visit today.
Well, I do not support China's inflammatory language on this issue. It's perfectly reasonable what is taking place, and I urge China to de-escalate.
So, Megyn Kelly, great to have you. Was Pelosi's Taiwan trip brave or foolish?
It was vain. By the way, what Liz Truss says was exactly right. Once she said she was going, once it was released that she was going and she was threatened if she went, she had to go because we're the United States of America and we don't bow down to the Chinese when they say, you better not. And she had no point, no other option at that point but to go. But to go in the first place, and I've really been thinking about this and talking to very smart people about it for a few days now, Dan, to go in the first place, I think was foolish. It was all about her. And I don't think it was brave because you know who's going to bear the risks of her visit? The Taiwanese. They're the ones who are. Is she going to be there when the missiles rain down over the next week? She's not going to be there. She's not going to have to worry about the fallout from that. Is she the one who's going to have to deal with the consequences of the ban on exports that they've now placed on 100 products China has in Taiwan? No, she doesn't have to deal with that. And even back at home, if this is sort of the match that lights the flame that leads to a greater conflict that turns a Cold War into a hot war between the United States and China, she's leaving office. She's 82. She's going to get bounced out because the Democrats are going to lose control of the House in November. So she's not even going to have to deal with the consequences of what she just did. And why now? Was there some urgent need for Nancy Pelosi, this 82-year-old outgoing House Speaker, to swing by Taiwan right now when we're already in a massive conflict with Russia? Through the Ukraine support? It's not a great time for us to be provoking other great world powers. And China, while we've been worried about nation building in Afghanistan and Iraq for the past 20 years, has been steadily building up its ballistic missiles and its land to Navy to sort of seacraft missiles and all of its other military capabilities. And there are a lot of military experts who now believe that if we get involved, the American people get involved in a war trying to stop China from taking over Taiwan, as Joe Biden, contrary to our policy, has explicitly said we would do, we'd lose. So it's really, and we're already distracted with all the things happening in Ukraine. So it's not a great time. I think it was a vanity project. And I think she selfishly, with the 30,000 different kinds of $1,000 ice cream behind her, once again made it all about her because she really wanted a Yas Queen moment.
And yeah, you say why not? It seems it literally was because she's viewing this as her international farewell tour, and it's something she's always wanted to do. So sort of to hell with America's public policy priorities because
she thought
it's about what works
she
for
would
her.
look strong. She thought she would look strong. She thought she would look like, Beyonce in a pantsuit. And she called it exactly wrong. I think while some Democrats may be like, you go, girl, the truth is that the administration didn't really want her to go. I think they understand the position that this has put us in. The American people weren't behind this. She got some support from conservatives and from Republicans who understood bending the knee to China once more isn't really a great idea. But why were we even in the position on this where we had to consider bending or not bending? Because of her, right? How many times can we bend the knee to China in a 2-year period? We've already decided to just brush right past the fact that 1 million Americans are dead because of the virus they released. And now she's put us in a position where we really had no choice but to stand by her intent on taking a little field trip from the place she always dreamed she might attend, looking out her window in San Francisco, like back to the Sarah Palin years. I can see it from my house, and I really want to go, and they put my name in a big building. But the whole thing, Dan, got me thinking about my mother-in-law who just turned 86 and this sweatshirt she wore on her 86th birthday, which said something to the effect of, don't mess with an old person because the death penalty has a lot lower threat than you think it does.
Very true. Very true. As a total aside, Megan, I'm sorry, I couldn't stand that even when she was up there at the microphone, she kept the cloth mask on as if it was going to protect her in some ways, where we've just had Biden, who's masked up all the time and has had, 3 boosters or whatever, infected with COVID for the second time. I just thought, what's that about? It's just virtue signaling
100%.
nonsense, that cloth mask of Pelosi, right?
Well, they continue it. And listen, it's one thing for her and Joe Biden to engage in that sort of a theater. But can I tell you, here in America, we just found out that there are school districts, like in Washington, D.C., that are mandating the COVID vaccine now for children 12 and older. In parts of Louisiana, they're now mandating the COVID vaccine for 5 and up. You cannot go to school unless your 6-year-old gets mandatorily vaccinated. That's insane. It doesn't matter whether they've already had COVID. And by the way, we know these vaccines do absolutely nothing to prevent the spread of Omicron. That's why they're working to come up with a new vaccine that might work against Omicron. So what? I have to mandatorily vaccinate now my 8-year-old with a vaccine that won't prevent him from getting Omicron, even though he's already had Omicron, so he doesn't need it, so that he can just go to school and learn in a district in which I pay my taxes. We've lost our ever-loving minds over here.
Yeah, I mean, to me, that is child abuse. I know some people would think that is extreme, but I really do feel that, because you're giving them a vaccine they don't need that could cause them physical harm. And the mask thing, I just can't believe American Democrats are still going with it. I mean, largely on the whole in this country, I mean, look, you still get the odd extremists who walk around with a mask, but largely on the whole, even the far left in this country have realised that cloth masks are completely pointless.
And that if you really believe in the mask, you should wear one. You should wear an N95 or a KN95, which apparently do a rather good job of protecting the wearer. The solution to your problem is not putting your cloth mask over my face or my kid's face all day in school. We just had a report out of LA where they have some 20,000 students who did not re-enroll, students who should be in school, it's mostly younger kids, who did not re-enroll for this year after 2 years of lost learning, right? They've already lost it. They weren't allowed to go to school because they were an asymptomatic close contact, all baloney reasons why they weren't allowed back in. And now LA has had to postpone its mandatory vaccine requirement for children because no one is going into school. They understand that it's unnecessary. Even over here in America writ large, only 31% of parents have gotten the vaccine, which is readily available for young kids now, who have kids between the ages of 5 and 12. Only 31% have done it. Americans are on to this. They understand they don't need it, and that given especially the risks of myocarditis that the vaccine creates, in particular in young men, there may be more harm than good created by these vaccines, and they're going to win. In the end, if they don't win at the school level, they'll win at the ballot box come November.
Well, indeed, as you said earlier, Megan, I think a reckoning is coming in November. It's going to be fascinating to watch the midterms. Megyn Kelly, thank you so much. Star US journalist, host of the Megyn Kelly Show, which you can find on Sirius XM, YouTube, and as a podcast. But coming up, as she soars in the polls, could Liz Truss deliver another Boris-style stonking Tory majority? Whisper it. There's actually some hope that could happen. My superstar panel will debate that in the Media Buzz after 10, and we'll have a first look at tomorrow's newspaper front pages too. But next, after 3 COVID jabs, best-selling author and Spectator columnist Lionel Shriver has said no to another booster. She's going to explain why as tonight's Outsider straight after the break.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, Matt. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
A first look at tomorrow's newspaper front pages coming up. But first, Lionel Shriver is tonight's outsider. Now, unlike the rest of the UK media, we've been shining a light on the tragic injuries and deaths caused by the COVID vaccine, and as victims of vaccine damage begin to have their stories heard, it's understandable that even the most ardent members of the pro-jab orthodoxy should now be having second thoughts. Now, Lionel Shriver, who is triple vaccinated, now says she will not be getting boosted again. In a change of heart, the acclaimed author of We Need to Talk About Kevin has begun to question the overall efficacy and safety of COVID vaccinations and said that she no longer wishes to be blackmailed by the state through deeply immoral vaccine passports. And as a Spectator columnist, Lionel has recently written about her big decision, and I'm delighted to say she's here now to tell us more. So, Lionel, what was the main thing that made you change your mind over the extra boosters?
It was cumulative. First off, if you look at the data from Israel, and that's one country that has double boosted, that has given 4 shots to virtually the entire population, and it didn't make any difference. I mean, the stats just sat there. It didn't improve hospitalization, didn't improve death, didn't improve cases. It was a nothing. So that even to the extent that these vaccines are effective, which I'm beginning to question, a 4th shot doesn't do anything. There's clearly a diminishing returns element here. You know, my last Spectator column, I think, speaks for a lot of people who were grateful for the vaccines at first and open to it and trusting of both government and the pharmaceutical companies. But surely they wouldn't want to poison the whole world. And I even went along with the first booster. But of course, that was 3 shots in 9 months. And you work that out, you're potentially getting 4 a year. So I start getting leery of that. But, otherwise, I subscribe to the newsletter, The Daily Skeptic, and that provides a lot of statistics that don't get very much play in the regular newspaper. And the truth is that it rapidly became clear that, especially once Omicron came along, you were more likely to get COVID if you were vaccinated. And that includes triple vaccinated. So, you know, you remember that in the United States, for a while there, they were on their high horses talking about, you know, this is a pandemic of the unvaccinated. You know, if it weren't for the unvaccinated, then COVID would just disappear. Well, they don't say that anymore. This is actually a pandemic now of the vaccinated, apropos of Joe Biden. And I don't want to take a medication that's not going to do me any good. I think the vote's out on whether or not vaccination really reduce deaths during Delta and Alpha? I don't know. But it's certainly not doing much good now. And when in doubt, with any medications, I just, if there's a question, if it's a toss-up, then I don't take it.
No, indeed. And I thought it was really fascinating what you had to say about vaccine damage, because you say the approval was obviously rushed through on an emergency basis. So as a result, the damage, the side effects are many times higher than those of traditional tried and tested vaccines for the likes of polio and MMR. And you say, owing to troublesome ad hoc reporting, the official stats may show just a fraction of the real number of COVID vaccine casualties. Because let's be honest, Lionel, the health establishment, big pharma, they don't really want us to talk about the vaccine-damaged folk, do they?
No, it gets no press whatsoever except on channels like this one. And unfortunately, that kind of media apartheid, if you will, is a little tainting, because it's as if, oh, this is just some right-wing conspiracy. Only those crazy people on GBNews are talking about it, so it can't be serious. But these are statistics that are kept by the government, and even the statistics that they've got, the reported vaccine harms, are wildly more common than with more traditional vaccines, in which I have a great deal of faith, and I'm tired of people who are getting dubious about the COVID vaccines in particular, which aren't even genuine vaccines, being called back anti-vaxxers. That's why I wrote that column, because I thought I was speaking for a lot of regular people who are like, we understood why this was rushed to begin with, but we've had some time now to collect some information. And the truth is those vaccine harm databases are probably about 10% of reality, which brings the frequency of some kind of negative, serious, at least somewhat serious negative side effect to about 1 in 100. That's extremely high.
Extremely high in particular, isn't it, for a vaccine that the vast majority of people really don't need in terms of protecting you from any sort of serious harm?
It's just not that dangerous a disease, not right now, and certainly for anyone, say, under 60. It has evolved to become less dangerous. It started out not that dangerous for younger people anyway, and now we're stuck with this permanent overreaction. It's an infection that we have to deal with it's as if it's special and especially terrible, and you have to keep special track of it. And it's time to normalize. It's time to say, okay, it's not going anywhere. It's one more virus we're sometimes going to get. Let's get on with business.
Absolutely fascinating conversation. It was a brilliant column as well. The Spectator's Lionel Shriver. Thank you so much, Lionel. We'll speak soon. It's 10 p.m. I'm Dan Wootton. Tonight, Liz Truss's bold vision for Britain has won her the backing of the Daily Mail. So after securing the key endorsement of the country's biggest selling newspaper, as well as the former Health Secretary Sajid Javid tonight, and with a YouGov poll putting her streaks ahead of Rishi Sunak, could Truss actually emulate Boris and win another Tory landslide majority? My superstar panel weigh up her chances at the polls next. Tonight, I'm joined by top columnist at the aforementioned Daily Mail, Amanda Patel, entrepreneur and activist Adam Brooks, and the broadcaster Ashley James. Lord Cruddas has sensationally called for the Tory leadership contest to be suspended tonight amid cyber hacking fears and belief. He believes it's time members were given a vote on Boris Johnson remaining in number 10. Now, one Tory MP who's voiced support for the Tory peers' campaign to get Boris officially on the ballot is unfaltering loyalist Michael Fabricant. He joins me live at 10:20. After the Tavistock Gender Identity Clinic was branded unsafe and shuttered by the NHS last week, will this convince our institutions to finally disown the deranged fictions spouted by liberal ideologues? Columnist extraordinaire Rod Little uncancelled on this at 10:40. As singer and ex-Disney star Demi Lovato takes the mickey by revealing she's once again going by she, her, less than 15 months after she demanded that we refer to her as they, them.
So for me, recently I've been feeling more feminine, and so I've adopted she, her again.
Can't we just end this virtue signaling nonsense once and for all? Well, we'll debate that. Plus, is mind control the best defence against nuclear weapons? Spoonbender Yuri Gala certainly thinks so.
And I have a warning for you, Putin. I urge you all to read my warning, all of you. And I'm serious about it, very.
All of that. Coming up in the Media Buzz at 10:30, and of course I'll crown tonight's Greatest Britain and Union Jackass before the night is out too. But first, before all of that, the news headlines at 10 with Tamsin Roberts.
Dan, thank you. Good evening from the GB newsroom. The mother of Archie Battersby has said the legal battle to postpone the withdrawal of her son's life support was at an end. The European Court of Human Rights today rejected the application by the boy's parents to stop the withdrawal of his treatment. 12-year-old Archie has been in a coma since April and doctors have declared him brainstem dead. Archie's mother, Holly Dance, says the rejection is another heartbreaking development and that they will now fight to get Archie moved to a hospice. Sajid Javid has become the latest heavyweight to throw his support behind Liz Truss to become the next Conservative Party leader, who has reiterated her promises to cut tax and grow the economy at the Cardiff Hustings event tonight. The Foreign Secretary said she would try to change the mandate of the Bank of England, arguing that increasing taxes could never lead to growth. Truss also pledged to unite the union, criticising the Scottish Government for its plans on a second independence vote, and said Wales would receive more financial support if she becomes Prime Minister.
I think as somebody who is from not a Conservative background, who, I've got friends in other parties, my family, lots of them don't support the Conservatives. But I know how to convince people and how to bring people on board. So I think being a convert is actually an asset, because what do we have to do at the election? We have to convert people. We can't just talk to ourselves. We actually have to go there and win in the country.
Rishi Sunak remains 34% behind his competitor Liz Truss in a poll of Tory members. But in the Hustings event tonight, he promised to give his heart and soul to the party. The former Chancellor set out a number of key policies, including what he described as bold and radical reforms to make the NHS more cost-effective. He also pledged to cut income tax once inflation is under control and reduce the number of failed asylum seekers in the UK.
I will apply that same urgency, that same energy, that same grip and radicalism to tackling all of our problems, reforming public services, growing the economy, tackling migration, putting in practice those Conservative values of hard work, of aspiration, of hope that we all hold dear to build a better Britain. But more than that, I promise you all this. I will give you my everything, my heart and my soul, everything I've got.
The Bank of England is expected to announce another interest rate hike tomorrow. The central bank's under pressure to control spiralling inflation, with a think tank warning it could hit 15% next year. The Resolution Foundation says oil prices have fallen substantially, but gas price increases are wiping out any good news. If the bank raises the base rate by 0.5 percentage point, it'll be the biggest increase since 1995. TV, online and DAB Plus radio, this is GB News. Now it's back to Dan Wootton tonight.
Tomorrow's News Tonight now on our Media Buzz. First front pages in my hot little hands. And honestly, I'm just reading the story that The Independent's going with. It is ridiculous. Oh, so they say she's facing questions over so-called Fizz with Liz dinners, reporting that Truss is being asked why she allegedly did not declare thousands of pounds spent on schmoozing Tory MPs in the run-up to her leadership campaign. Her spokesperson denied Truss had been the organiser of the £3,000 champagne dinner last year. The point is, I'm sorry, there was no leadership race last year. Tory cabinet ministers are allowed to go out with Tory MPs. That's how it works. End betrayal of our kids is the Daily Mirror's provocative headline as it leads with Team GB's Olympic gold medalist Adam Peaty's interview hitting out at a lack of investment in sports facilities. Quite a strong headline, that, isn't it? End betrayal of our kids. Don't know that's quite what he meant. But the Daily Mirror, they're always going to politicise that, aren't they? My superstar panel back with me now. Star Daily Mail columnist Amanda Patel, the businessman and activist Adam Brooks, and the broadcaster Ashley James. Now, breaking tonight, the former Health Secretary Sajid Javid has thrown his support behind Liz Truss to be the next Prime Minister. Of course, that's pretty major given he's friends with Sunak. So far in the race for number 10, Truss has already taken apart the attention-seeking Nicola Sturgeon. Earlier today, she brilliantly exposed Mad Dog Mark Drakeford for his deplorable record as First Minister of Wales. Look.
The reality is that Wales has been let down by 20 years of Labour rule. And what I am about is about making sure we bring opportunity, investment to Wales, that we back Wales's fantastic farmers. And that's what I'm going to be talking about in the hustings tonight.
You're not making any comments about attention seekers?
No, I believe Mark Drakeford has not delivered for the people of Wales, and I will be holding him to account.
Good on you. It's that kind of take-no-prisoners approach that has Truss running away with it in the battle to be PM. A brand new YouGov poll of Conservative members for The Times found that Truss is smashing Sunak by 69% to 31%. Very similar type of poll in the Conservative home tonight as well. And rather tellingly, Truss beat Sunak across every single demographic, except for, wait for it, Tories who supported Remain, which I guess confirms everything I've been saying, that Fishy Rishi is the golden boy among the establishment and the elite. It's also been announced that Tory members will not be able to change their vote later in the leadership contest due to a cybersecurity threat, and this will undoubtedly serve as a hammer blow to the Sunak campaign, who are relying on gradually changing the minds of fellow Conservatives throughout August. For Liz Truss, meanwhile, the good times keep on coming after she received the most prized endorsement in the British media when she was backed yesterday by the Daily Mail. The paper's been a loyal supporter of Boris Johnson and is now advocating for Liz to continue his defining legacy both in government and at the ballot box. So this is what the newspaper wrote in their leader column. It's true that Sir Keir Starmer is an ocean-going dud, but with help from Scots, Nats, Lib Dems, Greens and the rest of the deluded left, he could conceivably cobble together a gimcrack government. We don't doubt that Ms Truss has the guts, gumption and guile to stop that happening, but she must not rely on Labour's uselessness to get her through. As her idol, Mrs Thatcher, said in her last conference speech before becoming PM, we want to be elected because we can do better, not because we couldn't possibly do worse. The Mail believes Ms Truss is able, willing and ready for the task. So, Amanda Patel, a major endorsement of Liz Truss from your newspaper. What can you tell us?
Well, God bless the Daily Mail. That's what I can say.
Always.
Look, it was sort of inevitable because when you look back at how both of the two contenders behaved as cabinet ministers, Rishi was a high-taxing, not conservative kind of conservative. Whereas Liz Truss has always been low-taxing. You know, Rishi brought in the NI tax. Liz was always opposed to it. And you know, let's just be realistic here. It's like a dating game, you know, except for there are only two blokes. Well, obviously one's a woman. But you just got two people to choose from. She is the person who is most like a conservative. And that's why we should back her. But I don't think that of course she will continue the things like Brexit that Boris stood for and won, and also the support for Ukraine. But she is a very different politician to Boris. But what worries me most about all of this is, you know, we can get all wrapped up in this, the 160,000 of us who actually are, you know, signed up Conservatives. But that poll that you referred to in the Times, only a quarter of Tories, these are paid-up members, think that she would win an outright majority.
Yeah, well, I wanted to ask you about that, right? Because there's another YouGov poll, and I know, look, we can't rely on specific polls, but you can look at trends. And it was really fascinating. This was a separate YouGov poll yesterday showing the Conservative Party in the midst of its biggest crisis in a generation, only losing to Keir Starmer's Labour by 1 point. And so it really has raised hopes that actually Truss could do OK.
Look, I'm going to get really boring here, which is something I never want to do on your show, Dan. But Liz Truss, she has great potential. She is more Thatcherite than Johnsonite, if there was such a word. Margaret Thatcher was leader of the opposition for 3 years before she was elected by the country and then served a full term, during which was one of the most catastrophic periods in British history, with the strikes, you know, bodies in the street, all the rest of it. She had 4 years to actually get things right. Liz is coming in, she's got 2.5 years. She hasn't had any training in that job. She hasn't
because, as you say, Thatcher, crucially, she had time as leader of the opposition.
She had 3 years
to prepare.
beforehand to prepare for it, and then a full term. Liz has been chucked in at the deep end.
Is she up to it? I mean, you're a former advisor, of course, to a Tory leader. Is she up to it?
Well, she bloody well has to be. Otherwise, it would be a catastrophe for this country.
Yeah.
And we'd end up with some ghastly kind of Labour concoction of you know, she has to be up to it. And I get this sense, OK, I've been wrong before. Her hair's looking better, OK? And I like the fact it was a bit frizzy today. I identified with that in the humidity. That was good.
Oh, come on, she has improved performance-wise so much just in a month. And to me, actually, that gives me even more faith in her because she can learn and
Dan,
listen
we
on
have
the
to have
job.
faith. This is a time when Conservatives have to believe. And I think that there is real steel in that woman. And I think that, and I just hope and pray that...
that she's not a Theresa May.
Oh, you're doing rhyming. You're doing rhyming shows now.
Oh, I'm so quick, aren't I? Actually, James, do you have the faith in Liz Truss to be a great Prime Minister who can save this country?
No, I read this Daily Mail piece and I'm wondering, what are they smoking there? Because even saying...
Excuse me!
She's in the office every day.
I do not do drugs.
I need to know, because even how it begins, all political careers famous end in failure. Boris Johnson is a striking exception to that rule.
Absolutely.
Surely he is the perfect example of failure. His own party got rid of him. But anyway, we're talking about level down Liz.
Rishi Sunak, that snake without the knife, did it.
Level down Liz, unlike her role model Thatcher, has already U-turned. She is literally doing exactly what Boris Johnson did, which people were fed up of, which is lying. Well, first of all, saying...
Not true.
She
Not
did
true.
lie,
Come
because
on.
it's been shown in the press release. So what I'm referring to is her obviously talking about giving pay cuts to anyone outside of the M25, public sector workers, in a time of a cost of living crisis. And then she tried to pretend it didn't happen, even though we've now seen the press release. And we know that she wanted to brag about how she was going to save £8.8 billion worth of savings.
Was that a disaster for Amanda?
Yes.
Look, at the moment, with they are both she and Rishi are throwing out policies like confetti.
Yeah.
You feel like you know, it's your own
But if you were
wedding.
advising her, because obviously that used to be your job for a Tory party leader,
yes.
would you have said quickly U-turn before this becomes a moment like Theresa May's dementia?
I would have, like Ashley's instincts, I would have said, don't bloody do it. Because it's like a milli-fuely. There are too many bloody layers to that policy, and there are too many points at which people can really attack you. Why would you have any policy where you're cutting...
lying that Boris Johnson was known for, and even today
Adam,
wheeling out Brandon Lewis to lie for her, and now we know it's a lie. That's exactly what people did for Boris Johnson.
I think we need to get back to say, will she win a majority? And I don't think there's any Conservative MP that could become leader to win a big majority at the next general election.
Close.
Very fair point.
Because...
Apart from Boris Johnson,
and this is why I believe...
Who's that getting rid of?
I believe if Boris had stayed on, they would have called a general election pretty soon, because things are going to get so bad in the next sort of 6 to 8 months with the cost of living crisis, the economy, businesses, bills, that The government are going to get blamed no matter what now.
That's a fascinating point, actually. That is a fascinating point. So, Amanda, former Tory advisor, I'm going to put that to you now. Liz Truss, she's going to win by a landslide. Most new leaders get an early bump, you know, that honeymoon period. Would you, if you were advising her, say, just go to the polls now? Call a snap election, go now.
Not in a million years. I do. If I could go back on your point, Dan, because it's a very important one. I think the whole system's flawed. I think if you change the Prime Minister, it should immediately go to the country, not to a bunch of Tory MPs and then the country.
But what about
there's no way I would do a snap election.
Things are going to get so bad.
6 months.
So bad.
Look, they are. Look at the energy bill.
Look, I'm talking from the ground.
Yeah.
You know, I'm a business owner. I don't know if I'm going to have 2 pubs next year because the electric prices will be more than my rent.
Astronomical.
Right? So things are going to get... If that's me, and I do pretty well, things are going to get terrible for some people. Now, how can someone vote for a government? A lot of people are going to turn their backs on the government, and that's why they need to get a bump now, or they need to...
They will not have a snap election because there are too many MPs who think they might lose their seats.
Yeah, but one thing I will say about Liz Truss...
Final word.
She's talking about lowering taxes. She's talking about not having lockdown. She's saying the right things to the silent majority. She needs to carry on doing this.
NI, do it straight away.
Yeah, I think she will. Now, how do you solve a problem like Putin? Forget Trident. It turns out our most formidable deterrent to a nuclear strike might just be Uri Geller. In a wonderfully bizarre Instagram post, the spoon vendor extraordinaire issued a stark warning to Mad Vlad against using nuclear weapons on his foes, particularly for some reason Scotland, claiming he can stop a missile strike with only his psychic powers. Look.
Hey, my dear friends, did you know that Russia and China are ahead of the US in hypersonic missiles? Did you know that Nancy Pelosi just landed in Taiwan? And you know who has the finger on the trigger? The trigger, China. And Putin, there's a website out there that gives an example that if a nuclear bomb, not a big one, a fast one, hits Scotland, 155,000, 200,000 people will perish. This is serious stuff. And I have a warning for you, Putin. I urge you all to read my warning, all of you. And I'm serious about it, very.
Plonker.
Yuri stressed that even though he will, quote, use every last molecule of his mind power to turn back any nuclear warheads, he can't do it alone and needs your help by visualising a golden shield in the sky. With military strategies, I think we all know who the next Defence Secretary might be. You're not convinced, Adam?
He's a plonker. He does this every World Cup, every Euros, and we never get anywhere, so he's obviously his powers are waning.
Adam Brooks, Ashley James, Amanda Patel, do stand by, because coming up, as the singer and ex-Disney star Demi Lovato reveals she's once again going by she, her, less than 50 months, stick with me, after demanding to be known as they, them, is it time that we just ignore all of this virtue signalling pronoun nonsense once and for all? My superstar panel will debate that, and we'll have a first look at more in tomorrow's newspaper front pages too. But first, amid calls for the Tory leadership contest to be suspended over cyber hacking fears, is this the push needed to get Boris back on the ballot? One of the outgoing PM's top allies, Michael Fabricant MP, debates that next.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV. On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GBNews.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go? Just take me to the studio, please, Matt. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We're trying to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Welcome back. Rod Liddell coming up. But first, breaking tonight, Liz Truss has spoken of her shock at being thrust into a battle to be PM during the latest Conservative hustings in Cardiff tonight.
Frankly, it wasn't a contest I wanted, and I think everybody was quite caught by surprise when it happened.
While influential Boris backer Lord Cruddas has called for the Tory leadership contest to be suspended amid GCHQ fears that the voting system is vulnerable to a cyber hack. The Tory peer suggested Boris Johnson should remain in power until the issue is fixed and members should be given the chance to vote on a referendum on the PM's leadership in the meantime. If members did vote to boot him out of number 10, the generous party donor has offered to pay for cyber protection for a new leadership contest between Sunak and Truss. In a letter to the Conservative Party board, Lord Cruddas said this is a big responsibility for the board because if there is only one invalid vote due to a cyber attack, the whole vote and campaign is destroyed. The result will lack integrity, credibility, and nobody will have confidence in the board and the result. If the members vote to keep Boris, then there is no need for a leadership campaign and no more cyber security threats. And actually, a new YouGov poll backs up what Lord Cruddas has been saying. Tory members do think it was wrong to depose Boris Johnson. Given a choice between Johnson, Sunak and Truss, 40% of members would vote for the Prime Minister to continue in office, 28% would support Truss, and only 23% would back Fishy Rishi. Well, one man who has voiced support for Lord Cruddas' campaign to get Boris on the ballot as Tory MP, Michael Fabricant, and he joins me now. So, Michael, loads of developments. Is what Lord Cruddas is saying, is it gaining any traction amongst the party?
Well, it's certainly gaining traction in the party. It's interesting as well, that saying, oh, by the way, right at the very beginning, at the end of before the commercial break, you were talking about pronouns, he, him and all that. And I just want to be known as he, him, pounds and ounces, feet and inches, miles, and Fahrenheit. So can we just make
basics?
That clear? Very important. Anyway, back to your question.
Yes.
And yeah, if the party had anything to go by, then they would certainly want Boris on. And it's interesting that that same YouGov poll said, and I'm just reading it here, that 53% of Conservative members think that the party was wrong, the MPs were wrong to get rid of Boris, and only 41% said they were right. And this was a real example, I think, of MPs being completely out of touch with the party. But will we get Boris on? I don't know. I don't think Boris wants to be on now. I think he's beginning to think of all the zillions he'll make on the lecture tour. You know, I think Theresa May made something like £1.5 million or £2 million last year doing lectures. Well, if Theresa could do that, can you imagine what Boris would make?
No, indeed, obviously. And look, there's loads of offers being thrown his way already. But Michael, you were loyal to Boris until the end. I obviously know you're initially backing Penny Mordaunt. You've now thrown your weight behind Liz Truss. But it's interesting because it feels to me, Michael, that you are one of the only MPs who remain in touch with your party membership.
Well, I think that might be because, You know, before I became an MP, I did volunteer work for the party, but I wasn't actually a party apparatchik. I'd never been a special advisor. I'd never been a councillor. And in fact, I was in a completely different business altogether in the broadcasting business. And, you know, I work with volunteers and I know how they feel. And they feel betrayed by so many members of Parliament. And it's going to be a tough one. I was listening to what you were saying earlier on. And although, you know, Liz Truss has got a fantastic track record as not only as Foreign Secretary, not only doing those foreign trade deals, but also being a very, very enlightened Lord Chancellor and Head of Justice, it's going to be a tough one. We'll have been in office for what, 14 years? Yeah. It'll be our 5th or 6th term. I'm losing count. But we've got, of course, Starmer on our side. He'll bore everyone to pay. But
and no one wants him. No one wants him as Prime Minister. No, but the terrible situation would be this coalition from hell, you know, the minority Labour government from hell, backed up by Scheming Sturgeon, who would demand an independence referendum too, backed up by the Lib Dems, who would demand a proportional representation, backed up by the Greens, who would demand something like, you know, net zero by 2030 and plunge us into economic chaos. Look, I very quickly, Michael, just wanted to ask you about Rishi Sunak, because MPs seem to really love this guy. But, you know, speaking to Amanda Patel on our Superstar panel earlier tonight, you know, she is convinced he is a snake, convinced the Tory party members will never forgive him. How do you think the party is going to deal with Rishi Sunak? It looks like he's going to lose. Is that the end of his political career? Will he ever be forgiven for the way that he betrayed Boris Johnson?
Well, you've asked a lot of questions there, Dan, so you say you want a brief answer. But I'll tell you what, first of all, I think it's a good example, actually, of MPs being out of touch. I think they were backing Rishi to begin with. Don't forget, he got the most votes, so he only got about a third of all the total votes, compared to something like 65% that Boris got when there was a leadership election. But they were backing Rishi more than anyone else, I think, because they thought they were onto a winner. But I can tell you, and we know anyway from the YouGov polls, that actually he's not going to be a winner. It's very unlikely anyway. We mustn't, you know, count our chickens before they're hatched. People don't like disloyalty. MPs might think, you know, oh, it's just politics, but actually the people who are members of our associations, they don't like disloyalty. They know that Rishi made 2 big mistakes, in my opinion. One was resigning and actually precipitating the whole crisis. And second, on the very day that Boris was forced out, he came out with the most incredible video, which must have taken months to produce, on the very day. And you would think that anyone
but he'd just done it in 24 hours. We're just meant to believe he'd just done it in 24 hours. Oh, and it was just a complete coincidence that he registered the Ready for Rishi website, Michael Fabricant, just a couple of days after the photo emerged of Boris in the back garden. And you know what, Michael, I'm not making any accusations, so I'm going to be very careful. But we don't know who took that photo. And that photo was taken from somewhere in the Treasury, you know, very close to Rishi Sunak's
in number 11. It was taken in the number 11 building, but as you quite rightly say, we don't know who took it.
No, we don't.
And there are connections, not connections, or one big building, but it was taken from the number 11 end, which is the home or the headquarters for the Chancellor of the Exchequer.
Yes, say no more. Say no more. Conservative MP still backing Boris and Liz Truss now too. Michael Fabricant, thank you very much. But coming up after the Tavistock gender identity clinic was branded unsafe and shuttered by the NHS, will this convince our institutions to finally disown the deranged fiction spouted by liberal ideologues? Columnist extraordinaire Rod Little, he isn't too sure. He's uncancelled in this at 10:40. But first, as singer and ex-Disney star Demi Lovato returns to going by she, her less than 15 months after demanding to be known as they, them, is it time we just ignore this nonsense once and for all about pronouns, you know? Youngsters, all they do is talk about pronouns these days. The media buzz with more of tomorrow's front page is next.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV. On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you. We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Let's return to tomorrow's news tonight on our Media Buzz. Lots of front pages in the Daily Telegraph leads with the story that a £250 million water plant built to protect hundreds of thousands of households from droughts has been switched off. The Daily Star's headline, Grasshopper Granny. The paper reports that those big drips at water firms are calling on people to snitch on neighbours using a hose pipe during the ongoing drought. Do you know what? Don't do that. Can I just tell you, do not do this. This is because South East Water today announced a ban on hose pipe and sprinkler use for its customers in Kent and Sussex. So grannies could face a £1,000 fine just for watering. They're petunias. Did I say that right? Petunias.
Petunias are done by now, Dan.
I don't really know about
Says the
flowers.
gardener.
Sorry, that's terrible. The Metro also leads with people being urged to grass up neighbours who flout the new hosepipe ban. Plus, the unfolding Taiwan crisis as Beijing sends bombers into the island's airspace. The Express leads with the terrifying story that soaring gas bills will push inflation to 15%, adding an extra £196 a month to people's bills. Far-right groups are attempting to radicalise children online. A Guardian investigation has found teachers, police officers and community leaders said long periods of unsupervised online access, compounded during COVID lockdowns, were resulting in UK children encountering far-right groups in greater numbers than before. The Daily Mail splashes on an exclusive interview with former Tory leadership candidate Suella Braverman, who's hit out at woke witch trials. The Attorney-General has branded the diversity industry a new religion in which zealots pursue the unbelievers, revealing that diversity training has been scrapped in her department. Good on you, Suella, I like that. And for a second night, The Sun leads with the Becky Vardy exclusive. She reveals husband Jamie has received death threats and amid her Agatha Christie court fights, police have made 3 arrests as they probe several communications. And you know what? I mean, I have to say, there's a lot of fantasy going on at the moment with Rebecca Vardy, a woman who I do like, but there is a lot of fantasy, having read the court case, bit of a fairy tale being painted. At the same time, death threats, come on, that is ridiculous. And what she's been put through, I think...
She's got post-traumatic stress disorder.
Absolutely. Do you believe that?
That's post-traumatic snitch disorder.
Amanda Patel, how hard? Amanda's back with Adam Brooks and Ashley James, by the way. But come on, a death threat, that's bad, Amanda.
We all get death threats, Dan. Come on.
So you think she's trying to curry sympathy?
Oh, look, even someone as insignificant as me in the world, I get. That's the nicest thing
Let's
you've
be
ever
honest,
said
it's not
to me.
nice, is it? I've had death threats
I get
as well.
death threats. I get threats of being gang raped. I get threats of idiots saying I want to gang rape her all by myself.
Yeah.
You know, the cops come round, say...
Who do you believe, Ashley? Colleen or
I mean,
Rebecca?
we all saw the text messages. I think she, no doubt, it was very stressful being caught, but we all saw the horrible messages. I think she was silly to go to trial, and it's a shame that it's come to this.
I think she's painted a fantasy, but everything I've seen her say doesn't stack up next to what I've read in...
But she absolutely doesn't deserve death threats.
No,
nor do you.
absolutely not.
Thank you, Ashley. Thank you.
That's the nicest thing I've ever said.
Nor do you,
people say
Adam.
I do,
Sometimes,
but
Adam.
yeah, sometimes
Now,
I do.
I actually like this woman, by the way, but pop sensation former Disney star Demi Lovato has found, wait for it, herself. I said her, back in the press for the most infuriating of reasons. Last year, remember, Lovato changed her pronouns to they, them in order to, quote, feel human at her core. I can sense Twitter woke-topians, by the way, primed and ready to accuse me of deliberately misgendering her, but put that phone down, log out of your account, because less than 15 months later, Demi has had a change of heart.
I've actually adopted the pronouns of she, her again. So for me, recently I've been feeling more feminine. And so I've adopted she, her again. But I think what's important is like, nobody's perfect. And especially when people are learning, it's just all about respect.
Demi now lists she, her, as well as they, them in her Instagram bio, which, as far as I'm concerned, confuses the matter even more. Demi, I mean, if I were to bump into you onto the street, what do I call you? Does it change on any given day? If so, how is anyone supposed to know what you're identified as for the moment? I mean, why are they even there in the first place, Adam Brooks? I just don't...
Utter nonsense. I tweeted something today and I was called a bigot. At the end of the day, I cannot understand why the average person puts pronouns in their bios.
What are your pronouns?
I don't know. I wouldn't even know what to call me. But look, it's ridiculous.
It is ridiculous. You know, we know. Of course you're a he. Right. Of course you're a she, Ashley. You know.
Hold up. One thing. I noticed that Ashley had pronouns in her bio on Instagram, and is that
So
because
what are
you're feeling quite feminine at the moment?
No, look, I'm always she, her, and proud to be so.
But why do you have to define it?
The reason I put pronouns in my bio, which is, by the way, it's a tick box. I didn't have to do
And what are your
work.
pronouns? Sorry.
She and her. Yours
Right,
are he
okay.
and him.
No, I have none.
unless you tell me otherwise, in
I
which
have none.
case I will respect those pronouns. But
it's
the
all
reason
here.
the reason I changed it is because apparently for lots of people who struggle with identity, whether they are trans, whether they are... by the way, I didn't grow up in this environment where we talked about gender. It was always presumed. But I was told that the more we do it, the more it allows other people to feel comfortable to express their gender.
So it's a woke
if it's not obvious.
So you do it as a woke virtue signalling thing to make yourself feel better.
No, it doesn't change my life at all. And equally, it doesn't change your life at all. But I'm also not offended at addressing someone as they, their. In French, I speak French, they have il, elle, on. And it's kind of like, for me, it's the same thing. It's using another pronoun that makes someone feel comfortable.
But what I don't understand is, and I'm going to be...
What are yours, Amanda?
That bitch who writes to the Daily Mail. I'm afraid if that's much loved, I have to say...
Cougar.
Oh, Adam, calm down.
Watch it.
Sorry.
Green room talk is private.
Right,
OK, I'm really confused because why do you need to call someone they or them when it's just one person? Why do you need a plural
This is what
pronoun?
I hate. This is what I hate.
I
It's
just don't
destroying the
understand
English
it.
language.
If someone can explain to me, that's the thing I'm really, really confused about. If
Well,
you
Rod
want to be
Little
called
is going to be
he
here in just a moment,
or
right?
her.
And Rod Little's going to be here in just a moment. He gets really annoyed about this too because...
Do you think he can explain
But it doesn't
that?
affect him and it doesn't affect you.
They change the pronouns that he uses for people writing columns. Now, I've had this experience where I've worked for newspapers and I've been told I have to write an entire 1,000 words without using he or him or she or her. And what I hate about it, because I'm a great lover of the English language, and what I hate is this is rolling back the English language because they, them doesn't work.
There is no way in the world that would have happened.
But it's happening.
Excuse me. I'm saying on the Daily Mail...
No.
No one would ever in a million years try and do that to me.
Was that a different newspaper?
I am just confused that I just don't understand what you're supposed to call people.
It's a fashionable thing.
Or do you...
It's not.
And what do you... If you see someone...
What about this Demi Lovato thing? What about Demi
name-
Lovato? Because 18 months ago she tells us all, oh, I'm going to be they, them, I don't have a gender. Now all of a sudden she says, oh, I'm back to being a woman. Are we meant to play along with this lunacy?
Yeah, look, I don't know
We
so
are,
much
aren't we?
about Demi Lovato, but I also agree that that is annoying, and I'm sure it's frustrating for lots of people who feel like they are misgendered all the time. And for me personally, it doesn't affect
But
my
she's
life
changed
at all.
her gender.
Yeah, and I agree. That's annoying.
I don't think
and
they
it
should be
doesn't
able to
help anyone's
change.
cause.
That's what I would say. Once you've decided, you can't change.
Trans people get misgendered all the time.
I googled today. I can't even say it. It's like Zem.
Zer or something like.
So if someone asked me to call them that, I'd laugh in their face. I'm not being horrible, and I respect people and their choices.
Horrible.
No, but I couldn't help myself but laughing because it makes no sense.
But look,
the only solution is every time you see someone who walks along and you don't know what to call them, you just go, "Oi, you!"
No, but I wouldn't laugh to be horrible. I couldn't help myself.
Times are changing whether we like it or not. And if my son ever says to me, I don't identify with being a he or him, would you call me they? Of course I would, because I want him to feel comfortable to be who he wants to be. And I think
I would
that's
not ever
polite.
let him go like that. I would say, I'll cut your fingers off if you do that.
This is a fashion
Then I'm going to keep my son away from you, Amanda.
This will die out.
Well, it's a dark night for the virtue signalling execs at Warner Brothers, though. The same studio that seemed determined to erase J.K. Rowling from the Harry Potter franchise over her defence of women's rights learned a harsh lesson in the futility of pandering to the woke after they were accused of racism and sexism for acting a new instalment in the Batman franchise. And I have to say, this was one of the most disgusting examples of Hollywood waste I've ever seen. The company last night announced that a £73 million Batgirl movie scheduled for release later this year will now never be released, despite it being finished. The studio blamed poor test screenings and a spiralling budget for the decision. However, given the movie featured not only Michael Keaton reprising his role as Batman after 30 years, but Afro-Latina actress Leslie Grace in the title role in DC's first openly trans live-action character, the Twitter elite swiftly started hurling their popcorn. Let this be a lesson to corporations out there. You live by the woke sword, you die by the woke sword. Ashley James, Adam Brooks and Anna Patel, do stand by, because coming up, could a superstar panellist be in line to be named Greatest Britain Union Jackass tonight? We'll find out soon. But first, after the Tavistock Gender Identity Clinic was branded unsafe and shuttered by the NHS, will right-thinking people finally rebel against the force-feeding of liberal falsehoods? Columnist extraordinaire Rod Liddell joins us next. But first, quick look at what's coming up in tomorrow's show.
Coming up on Dan Wootton tonight, with just over a month until either Rishi Sunak or Liz Truss becomes our next Prime Minister, I'll examine all the latest policies, sound bites and headlines from the Tory leadership race with the Conservative media's leading ladies, the Daily Telegraph's Madeline Grant and Conservative Home's Emily Carver, as well as my superstar panel, Conservative commentator Dominique Samuels, former Tory London mayoral candidate Sean Bailey and Sunday Mirror political editor Nigel Nelson. Plus, she was the talk of Westminster, and not always for the right reasons. But are we about to see even more of Carrie Johnson once she leaves Number 10? Daily Telegraph columnist and best-selling author Celia Walden analyses. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News.
But it's time now for Uncancelled. And this is where Britain's top commentators speak out on controversial issues without the fear of the cancel culture sweeping the rest of the media. Those standing up for responsible treatment of children with gender dysphoria let out a cheer on Thursday when the NHS finally decided to shut down the controversial Tavistock clinic. On Monday, we heard from ex-patient and whistleblower Cara Bell, who was prescribed life-changing puberty blockers at the age of 16 after just 3 consultations and later underwent surgery to remove her breasts.
I was elated to find that out. But I am remaining cautious about the whole thing. Medicalising children definitely shouldn't be allowed, and it's disgraceful.
Very, very brave woman. But as Rod Liddell believes, liberal falsehoods around sex and gender are still causing damage to vulnerable young people, and he joins me now. So, Rod, obviously, we were just talking about pronouns, and maybe that is the funny, light-hearted, ridiculous side of this argument. But then we talk about the Tavistock Clinic, and you see a young woman like Cara Bell, who has literally had her life destroyed, and you actually realise this isn't funny, is it, Rod?
No, the stuff you were talking about, Dan, isn't funny. That's not.
But it's ridiculous. Funny. You know, it's ridiculous.
You know, it may seem ridiculous, but it's not remotely funny. It's what happened at the Tavistock Clinic is merely the symptom of Alex deciding that her son should be called whatever pronoun he thinks he should be called. That is the stuff which causes it. What you have to do, if we are to sort this out, and what we're going to see with the Tavistock Clinic, I suspect, is an awful lot of legal action, an awful lot of writs coming in, and an awful lot of lives which have been ruined. It is child abuse by any other name, and it is probably the most appalling thing that the NHS has done since its creation. And we are all kind of complicit in it because we all went along with the falsehoods upon what this is based. And that's that there is somehow a vast number of people in this country who feel that their body is not theirs in some way and that it should be a different gender, that there's no direct relationship between sex and gender, and that someone who, by dint of some ghastly surgical procedure, decides to transition from being a man into being a woman somehow is properly a woman. And it's those falsehoods which now need to be addressed. The Tavistock Clinic is only the tip of that iceberg. It's only the expression of what happens when we follow this absolute idiocy, this absurdity, this denial of reality, this post-rational attempt that to prove that everyone can be whatever they wish to be, despite all the evidence to the contrary. Unless we attack the root cause of that, Dan, this stuff is going to go on wherever the next Tavistock Clinic is going to spring up.
OK, so connecting the two things together, Rod, if Demi Lovato said to you, oh, I want to be known as they, them, she, her, you say, don't be so ridiculous.
Well, I would never speak to Demi Lovato, I don't suppose. But no, if she said that to me, I would tell her, I will call you what I think you are. And that is a woman. You are a she. And that's that. Not that I'm ever going to use a pronoun for you, but if I did, we have to get away from this. We can't be what we think we want to be. We can't all do that. You know, when my daughter was 9, she wanted to be a lynx. But sadly, the surgery wasn't available for that at the time. She knows, we all know, you cannot be something that you are not.
What about the argument, though, Rod, that it's just about, OK, Demi Lovato, she's a different case because this is just clearly a troubled Hollywood attention seeker. What about someone who has actually undergone surgery, transitioned and is happy? So not Carabelle, who obviously went through that surgery and it was a huge mistake, but someone who's happy, Rod. You know, let's talk about a Caitlyn Jenner, who's actually on the show next week. Now, Caitlyn Jenner, she's great on all of this madness. She doesn't think that biological men should compete in women's sport, for example, but she's happily gone through the surgery and she wants us to describe her as a woman. Do you have a problem with that?
Yes, she's not a woman. And however admirable her views may be other than that, I'm sorry, you cannot buck the chromosomes. You cannot buck what science tells you. And that is there. It is there inherent in the chromosomes. And that is the whole problem we've got. It's a problem we've got with having, you know, trans men or trans women. I can't remember what way we have to call a man who has transitioned into being a woman. What I mean is men. We can't have men appearing on female wards in hospitals or in female prisons or using female changing facilities or competing against females in athletics. You know, it is an absurdity. And I'm afraid the absurdity springs from classifying people in such a way. And, you know, I don't want to be hurtful. I don't want to be hurtful to Caitlyn Jenner. I don't want to be hurtful to any transgender guy or woman watching this. But we have to have a sense of reality. And once we lose that sense of reality, then we are down the path towards the Tavistock Clinic and towards men with large beards and a penis winning women's cycle races. That is where it springs from. And you've got to attack this at its root.
And it was really disturbing, wasn't it, Rod, to read the former Equality Minister, Kemi Badenoch, in the Sunday Times, where you also have a column, talking about how the blob, you know, the health establishment, as I call them, they didn't even want her to speak to Carabelle. It was almost like there was an attempt to cover up what was going on at the Tavistock.
Well, there is an attempt to cover up. And the problem is the Tavistock Clinic, this wasn't rogue doctors operating in this area beyond our view. This was something which the Conservative government decided was perfectly okay to happen. And that's because everybody bought in, for reasons of either fear or stupidity, to this argument that one could change one's gender, and that there were lots of people who wished to do so, and that it was terribly important that we should go down this path. The idea that it's just the doctors is an absurdity. And Kemi was absolutely right. And don't forget, one of the other leadership contenders, Penny Mordaunt, said in the House of Commons, "And a trans woman is a woman." You know, that is the stuff we've got to stop. We've got to stop Stonewall spewing out this propaganda into people's schools, into the schools where children are learning that it's perfectly okay to transition. And if you want to be a woman, or if you want to be a man, and you're neither of those at the moment, then you can be it. No, sorry, you can't. It's not as simple as that. I ought to mention that there is a tiny minority, a tiny, tiny, tiny minority of people who genuinely do have a kind of intersex.
Yeah, well, you're actually born with both genders, and both.
Who are born with and that's completely different. And of course, this is, I would have thought, embarrassing and a problem for them as well.
No, indeed. Well, Rod Little, don't worry, I'm not going to ask for your pronouns. I wouldn't risk that. That's the associate spectator editor, Rod Little, who's written about this in the magazine this week. Well worth a read. It's time now to reveal today's Greatest Britain and Union Jackass. My superstar panel return. Amanda Patel, your nominee for Greatest Britain, please.
Can I change it to Rod Little? No? OK, it will be the Kate Middleton, Duchess of Cambridge, at the Commonwealth Games with Charlotte. Both of them potential future queens. I know you always win if you mention a queen. I just thought it was a wonderfully beautiful tableau, and it shows that you don't have to be like Harry and Meghan and keep your kids, hidden. You can actually bring them out. And
Ashley's suit, inspired by
Ashley's
Kate tonight. Ashley's
which
power
I spotted
suit,
as soon as I
good,
saw
Ashley.
her.
Adam Brooks, your nominee.
Mine is Sean Bailey. I come across a video on Instagram of him talking to youngsters and their parents about knife crime. He was in a boxing gym, and it really sort of hit home for me. I lost my father to knife crime, so I applaud him, and I support the Gloves Up, Knives Down campaign. Very, very worthwhile.
God, I had no idea, Adam.
I did not know that
absolutely terrible. We have a look at what Sean Bailey had to say.
The club will do everything they can for young people, and we'll talk about that. But the fact that there's so many parents in this room is absolutely brilliant. There's lots of things put on for young people, but they treat our young people as if they can just be delivered and then given back to us. What gives young people a future, what gives them a belief, is seeing that the adults around them are committed to their future.
Yeah, he's a great man, as are you, both superstar panellists. Ashley James, your Greatest Britain.
Mine is an honorary Greatest Britain. It's actually the state of Kansas, who overturned Roe versus Wade and have protected the right to abortion, which brings so much hope to so many for reproductive rights.
Well, of course, I'm going to go with Sean Bailey and Adam Brooks as today's Greatest Britain.
Agree.
Very, very powerful.
I agree.
Union Jackass time now. Amanda Patel, your nominee.
Mine is Comrade Corbyn, who has refused to condemn Putin for the invasion of Ukraine and now has attacked the West for providing Zelensky with weapons to fight this horrible invader.
Wanted this man to be Prime Minister. We must never forget that. Adam Brooks, your nominee.
My honorary jackass is Nancy Pelosi for potentially stoking World War III and ignoring the Pentagon advice not to go.
Yeah, it was an interesting one, this, wasn't it? Because obviously I support Taiwan, but this was all about her, as Megyn Kelly was saying earlier in the show. It was all about her, and it was all about her farewell tour to hell with international security. Very selfish indeed. Ashley James, your Union Jackass number.
My Union Jackass is Level Down Liz Truss for...
That's not catching on, Ashley.
It is.
That ain't catching on.
It definitely is. Yeah, obviously for
Why?
talking about cutting...
In a week that she's received all of these endorsements, she's leading in all of the polls, why would you make her your Union Jackass?
Talking about cutting public sector pay outside of the M25, it shows she's out of touch, and then embarrassingly doing a U-turn and trying to lie and cover up. It just reeks of Boris Johnson. So, yeah.
Do you know what? I'm delighted that she's doing things like getting rid of all of the diversity and inclusion managers in Whitehall. I say good on you. Good on you for that. I'm going to go with Amanda Platel, actually. Comrade Corbyn, he's at it again. But to me, what this is more of a lesson is the fact that, you know, Starmer wanted this bloke to be Prime Minister. We must never forget that. Amanda Platel, Adam Brooks, Ashley James, my fabulous superstar panel. Thank you so much. I'm back again tomorrow from 9 p.m. Headliners up now. Good night.
Good evening, Alex Deakin here with your latest weather update. Good news, if you're not a fan of the humidity, it is turning fresher for all of us tonight and tomorrow. Remaining dry though across the south, not much rain where we really need it. There will be showers further north from low pressure. There is this weather front drifting south that is introducing the cooler and fresher air, but it's not introducing much rain. And the warmth and humidity is still there at the moment across East Anglia and the southeast, but it will turn cooler as the night goes on. But as I said, not much in the way of rainfall, just the odd shower here and there. Much more in the way of rainfall further north, some pretty heavy rain this evening for Northern Ireland, and we'll see some heavy bursts of rain across eastern Scotland as well. Comfortable night here, and elsewhere it is turning cooler, but even by dawn, only temperatures dropping to 15 or 16 across East Anglia and the southeast. But it will feel fresher here tomorrow. Generally dry and sunny across the Midlands, South Wales and southern England. Further north there'll be sunny spells, but there will be showers as well, particularly early on over northwest England and throughout the day across northern Scotland. Temperatures here struggling in the mid-teens, but elsewhere close to average, high teens, low 20s. So not as humid, a much fresher feel, but we could still get to 25 across the southeast. Staying fine here on Thursday evening, a few more showers keeping going across western Scotland, some coming into Northern Ireland. We may see some feeding in through the Irish Sea into parts of northwest England into Friday morning. So yes, a few showers again across the northwest on Friday, but much of the east and certainly across the south. Not much in the way of rainfall. It's a dry, fine day on Friday with lengthy spells of sunshine, that fresher feel, that less humid feel, with temperatures close to average, high teens or low 20s. But again, feeling pretty fresh across northern Scotland with temperatures here in the mid-teens. Into the weekend, again, if you have to rain, it's not good news. Most places dry with sunny spells, starting off quite fresh, but signs of things warming up through the weekend into next week.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you. We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extreme